What is a seller rep?
Well, sellers of real estate, as we know,
Mhm.
often choose to work with an attorney prior to signing any real estate sales contract, or as we talk about it, the purchase and sales agreement. That's actually the name of the document.
Mm-hmm.
And an attorney can help negotiate the terms of the sale with the purchaser and their attorney prior to actually signing anything. Because once you do sign it, it does become a legally binding document. So
Sure.
it's always good to have an attorney review that before you actually sign anything. That's the first thing they teach you in law school is don't sign anything you haven't read.
Exactly.
So if, as a seller, you work with your agent and have not yet decided on an attorney, it's wise to add an additional provision. There's a section in that contract where you can add additional things that you want to make the agreement contingent on, or make sure you get the couch in the attic or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
But you can add in anything you'd like. And if the seller does not yet have an attorney, I'd recommend adding something that says this contract is contingent on review and approval by the seller's attorney
Yep.
to occur within 7 business days of the last dated signature on this contract. So that preserves the seller's ability to have an attorney look it over. Even if they don't have one yet, they sign it and they're like, oh no, this is something legal. Maybe I should have had an attorney look.
Yeah.
At least that gives them a little bit of space to go back and make sure that they did the right thing for themselves.
And you know what? That during that time period too, Teresa, I mean, a buyer could pretty much walk away in the first 10 business days of a transaction. A buyer could walk away for any odd reason if they're not satisfied with a transaction here in Rhode Island. If they get cold feet, I mean, they have literally no risk in the first 10 days. The sellers will assume actually that risk of taking their home off the market. That's why we put it as active pending, so it still shows up on Zillow, Truly, all those, hundreds of websites, so we can take backup offers.
Right. It's more common in Massachusetts as well because typically there the attorney needs to draft the purchase and sales agreement instead of the real estate agent, because in Massachusetts that's considered the practice of law, which technically real estate agents are not qualified to do, so it has to be drafted by an attorney. So, in addition, what is a seller rep? We were talking about what else an attorney does on behalf of a seller. They will review the title exam that gets conducted by the buyer's attorney to make sure that there are no outstanding title issues.
Yeah.
And the seller is required to convey what's called clear title to the buyer. So they have to really make sure that they're conveying the most secure, clear, unencumbered ownership to the buyer, because that's what they pay for.
Exactly.
The seller's attorney will draft a deed that transfers ownership of the property from the seller to the buyer, and along with various state forms and affidavits, they state that the seller hasn't contracted for work that hasn't been paid yet, which could affect the title and the lien status of the property, things like that. They will obtain any mortgage payoff statements that exist to make sure that the correct amount gets sent to the seller's lender and close out that account for them. If the seller is an out-of-state resident, there are tax forms that need to be completed as well. The state has withholding requirements in these scenarios if you don't live in Rhode Island, but you're selling a property located in Rhode Island.
6%.
So it's important to have an attorney so that these get completed properly and promptly. A lot of the IRS guidelines are strict, after the closing. Sometimes the buyers, have 3 days to submit this thing. It all has to be done
seamlessly.
To a T. It's the IRS,
Yeah.
So if the property was not the seller's primary residence, or if a portion of the house was used for rental or business purposes, you own a 3-level or, a duplex and you rent out one side and you live in the other, which is very common, there are tax implications to that if you're selling that property. Some portion of it was a primary residence, some was used for rental, which means you got income, which means that needs to be taxed. So there's a lot of scenarios that can take place. So it's important to have an attorney along with a good accountant, especially for that, that can guide these sellers through all these requirements, because it can be a little overwhelming.
I agree. I mean, the process itself and just the real estate transaction part, that a real estate agent does is 183 steps, as I told our audience in the last segment, and then you couple that with what you do, and then with what a mortgage broker does to bring in pre-approved buyers, and then what an inspector does, and what everybody else does, and there's 42 people involved in a transaction. So I mean,
so many moving parts, and some of the
ton.
stuff I said is standard, in seller representation.
Mhm.
But it's good to have an attorney who can think fast and overcome scenarios, to keep a deal together, and
Yep.
not have to, say, I'll look into it. You just have the answer because you've done it before.
Yep, absolutely. And I can say firsthand, I use Germani Title in closing for all of my clients. Basically, they're one of our key partners here, and we've had nothing but great success and a lot of stories and a ton of compliments from our clients about your firm. So thank you for everything that you do for us and for our clients, and thanks for coming on the show. And we'll see you hopefully in the studios next week, huh?